Teacher mocks dirty student. But the next day the girl arrives escorted by luxury cars. Jennifer Thompson watched with disdain as the classroom door slowly opened. Her lips curled into an expression of disgust when she saw who was late yet again. The girl, about 10 years old, hesitated at the entrance, her fogged-up glasses slipping down her nose as she clutched a worn-out backpack. Her clothes were visibly dirty, with stains that looked like dirt and what might have been food. "Late again, Emily?" the teacher exclaimed, interrupting her math explanation. "And by the looks of it, no shower again." A murmur spread through the room. Some students giggled quietly, while others looked away uncomfortably. Emily remained frozen at the door, her fingers gripping the backpack strap so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Get in and sit at the back." "Away from the other students," ordered Jennifer, pointing to an isolated desk in the corner. "I don't want that smell distracting the class." The girl walked slowly to the back of the room, each step echoing in the awkward silence that had settled. Her old sneakers made a muffled sound against the cold floor. As she sat down, she tried to make herself invisible, hunching her shoulders forward. "As I was saying before the interruption," Jennifer continued, emphasizing the word sarcastically, "let's solve this math problem. Who can tell me what 45 plus 32 is?" Several hands shot up immediately. At the back of the room, Emily also raised her hand timidly, but the teacher pretended not to see. "Very good, Jason. You may answer." 77, ma'am," the boy replied proudly. "Excellent. At least some students here pay attention in class," said Jennifer, casting a pointed glance toward Emily. The morning continued the same way. Every time Emily tried to participate, raising her hand or whispering an answer, she was systematically ignored. During English class, when the teacher asked someone to read a passage from the book, Emily volunteered, but Jennifer said she needed someone who could read properly. The recess bell rang, and the children rushed outside to the playground. Emily lingered behind, slowly organizing her things. When she finally made it to the playground, she sat alone on a distant bench, pulling out a piece of bread wrapped in wax paper from her backpack. "Hey, Emily," called a girl named Sophia, approaching curiously. "Why are you always late?" Emily chewed slowly before answering. "I help my grandma in the mornings. Sometimes it takes longer than I expect." "Your grandma lives with you?" "Yes, just the two of us. She's not doing too well, so I take care of her." Sophia sat beside Emily, eyeing the simple snack. "Do you always just eat bread?" "It's okay," Emily replied with a forced smile. "My grandma always says what matters is being healthy." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now, continuing. Across the playground, Jennifer Thompson chatted with other teachers in the group that always formed during recess. "I can't stand that dirty girl anymore," she complained, taking a sip of coffee she'd brought from home. Late every day, smelling awful, and still trying to participate like nothing's wrong. "Jennifer, don't you think you're being a little harsh?" asked Amanda, the PE teacher. "The girl seems hardworking." "Hardworking?" Jennifer rolled her eyes. "If she were hardworking, she'd be on time and take a shower. It's basic manners parents should teach." "Maybe she has problems at home," Amanda suggested, watching Emily sitting alone. "Everyone has problems. That's no excuse for coming to school looking like trash. The other students get uncomfortable." The pedagogical coordinator, Margaret Wilson, a woman in her 60s who had worked at the school for decades, passed by the group at that moment. "What are you all talking about?" she asked, noticing the tone of the discussion. "About Emily Parker," Jennifer replied. "That girl in my class who always comes to school dirty." Margaret knew the case well. She had observed the situation many times and was bothered by how some teachers treated the child. "The girl's family is well known in this neighborhood," she said calmly. "Her grandmother, Grandma Faith, used to be very active in the community before she got sick." "That doesn't change the fact that the girl needs to learn about hygiene," Jennifer insisted. "Maybe we should look into the situation more before making judgments," Margaret suggested, but Jennifer was already losing interest in the conversation. Recess ended, and everyone returned to their classrooms. The afternoon followed the same pattern as the morning. Emily tried to participate but was constantly ignored or discouraged. When she made a small mistake solving a problem on the board, Jennifer made sure to point it out in front of the whole class. "See, children, what happens when we don't pay attention," the teacher said, vigorously erasing Emily's answer. "That's why it's important to come to school prepared, clean, and with a focused mind." Emily's cheeks turned red, but she didn't respond. She just went back to her seat at the back of the room and continued taking notes in her notebook, which, despite being old, was always neat and carefully written. When the final bell rang, the children rushed to leave. Emily waited until everyone was gone before getting up. As she passed the teacher's desk, she paused. "Teacher Jennifer?" "What is it now, Emily?" Jennifer asked without looking up from the papers she was organizing. "I just wanted to say I'll try to come earlier tomorrow." Jennifer finally looked at the girl. For a brief moment, something in her eyes softened, but she quickly regained her stern expression. "We'll see if you can keep that promise. And since you're making promises, how about promising to take a shower too?" Emily lowered her head and left the room without another word. Jennifer watched her go and for a second wondered if she had been too harsh, but she quickly pushed the thought away. Rules were rules, and hygiene was essential in a school environment. Emily walked through the neighborhood streets until she reached home, a simple but well-kept house despite its limitations. When she opened the door, she was greeted by the smell of medicine and her grandmother's weak voice. "How was school today, my flower?" "It was fine, Grandma. The teacher taught new math." Emily didn't mention the humiliation she'd endured. She never did. She didn't want to worry her grandmother, who already had enough health problems to deal with. Faith Parker lay in her bed, surrounded by medicine bottles and medical papers. At 72, she suffered from severe arthritis and diabetes, conditions that had worsened in recent months, leaving her increasingly dependent on her granddaughter. "You came home later today," her grandmother observed. "I stayed a little longer at school organizing my notebooks," Emily lied, not wanting to admit she had hidden in the bathroom to cry after what happened in class. The truth was, Emily woke up every day at 5 in the morning to take care of her grandmother before school. She made breakfast, organized the medicines, helped her grandmother with personal hygiene, and even did some basic housework. She was often late because Grandma Faith had bad mornings, needing extra care. The dirty clothes came from Emily washing her grandma's and the whole house's laundry before getting ready for school, often splashing dirty water on herself in the process. With only one change of clothes for school, she didn't always have time to change when it happened. "Grandma, are you feeling better today?" Emily asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "A little, my dear. Your care makes all the difference. You're very special, you know." Emily smiled genuinely for the first time that day. No matter how hard things were at school, at home, she felt loved and valued. "I'll make dinner," she said, standing up. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you," Grandma Faith said, her voice turning serious. The girl stopped and turned to her grandmother. "What is it, Grandma?" "Remember my friend Elizabeth, who used to live in the neighborhood before moving to Washington, D.C.? Yes, you always say she was very successful in business." "That's right. I got a letter from her today. She's coming to visit tomorrow." Emily was surprised. Grandma Faith rarely had visitors, except for the closest neighbors. "That's great, Grandma, you've missed her." "Yes, but there's something else. Elizabeth doesn't know about our current situation. When we were young, I helped her a lot when she was struggling. Now she's a very successful woman, and I don't want her to feel obligated to help us out of pity." Emily understood her grandmother's worry. Grandma Faith had always been proud, preferring hardship over charity. "Don't worry, Grandma. I'll go to school as usual, and she won't even see me. Actually, she wants to meet you. I always talk about you in my letters to her." That night, Emily had trouble sleeping. She kept imagining what it would be like to meet this mysterious friend of her grandmother's. She got up even earlier the next day at 4:30 in the morning to make sure everything was perfect for the visit. She bathed her grandmother, changed the bedsheets, tidied the house, and prepared a special breakfast with what little they had. As usual, some water from the basin she used to bathe her grandmother splashed onto her blouse. "Grandma, I'll change real quick," she said, glancing at the clock and realizing she was running late. "There's no time, sweetheart. You're already late." Emily hesitated. She didn't want to be late again and give teacher Jennifer another reason to humiliate her, but she also didn't want to go with a wet blouse. "Just go like that. Hey, it's just a few drops. By the time you get to school, you won't even notice," Grandma Faith encouraged. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Emily kissed her grandmother's forehead and ran to school, her backpack bouncing on her back. The sky was gray, threatening rain, and she quickened her pace, trying to make it before the bell. She arrived just as the bell rang, out of breath and with damp spots on her blouse. As she walked into the classroom, all eyes turned to her, and Emily felt her stomach tighten. "I don't believe it," Jennifer Thompson said, stopping what she was writing on the board. Emily Parker, once again arriving at the last second, and she paused to take a closer look at the girl. "Wet? What excuse will you give me today?" I was helping my grandmother and..." "Always the same story. How convenient to have a grandmother to blame for all your irresponsibility," the teacher interrupted, drawing nervous giggles from some students. Emily's cheeks burned. For the first time, a wave of anger rose in her chest. Her grandmother wasn't an excuse, she was the most important person in her life. "My grandma is not an excuse," she said, her voice louder than she intended. A tense silence fell over the room. Jennifer turned fully to face the girl, her eyebrows raised in surprise and indignation. "Excuse me? Are you talking back to me? I just meant that my grandma is a real person. She's sick and needs me." "Oh, so now you're going to lecture me?" Jennifer's voice rose a notch. "A girl who can't even keep herself clean wants to teach me about responsibility? I do keep myself clean. These stains are because I was taking care of her before coming to school." "Taking care of her? You're 10 years old. Children don't take care of adults. Adults take care of children. That story doesn't make sense." The entire class was dead silent, watching the confrontation. Some students looked uncomfortable, others curious. Sophia, who had talked to Emily during the last recess, seemed to want to say something but didn't dare. "You know what I think?" Jennifer continued, walking toward Emily. "I think you make up these stories for attention. Sick grandma taking care of an adult. All very convenient to excuse your lack of hygiene and punctuality." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes, but refused to let them fall. She wouldn't give the teacher that satisfaction. "It's not made up," she said quietly. "Of course not," Jennifer replied sarcastically. "Go sit down, and next time you want to make up stories, at least come up with something more creative." Emily walked to her desk at the back of the room, each step feeling endless. She sat down and opened her notebook, trying to focus on the lesson, but the teacher's words echoed in her mind. The day went even worse than the ones before. Jennifer seemed to have decided Emily needed a lesson in respect. Every question the girl asked was met with a sarcastic remark. When Emily gave a wrong answer, the teacher said it was to be expected from someone who makes up stories. During recess, Sophia approached Emily again. "Hey, are you okay? The teacher was really cruel today." "I'm used to it," Emily replied, but her voice betrayed her sadness. "Is your grandma really sick?" "Yes, she has arthritis and diabetes. Some days she can't even get out of bed." Sophia thought for a moment. "My mum's a nurse. She always says taking care of sick people is really hard. You're really brave." For the first time in a long while, Emily felt understood by someone at school. "Thanks for believing me." "I do believe you. And I think Teacher Jennifer is wrong. I'll tell my mom about your situation." Emily grew worried. "No, please don't tell anyone. My grandma doesn't like people knowing about our problems." "But maybe someone can help." "Please," Emily insisted. "Promise you won't tell." Sophia hesitated but finally agreed. The rest of the day was tense. Jennifer kept up her hostile attitude, and Emily felt more and more isolated. When she finally got home, she was surprised by the scene she found. Her grandma was sitting in the living room armchair, wearing her best clothes, chatting animatedly with a well-dressed woman Emily had never seen before. "Emily," Grandma Faith called. "Come here, sweetheart. I want you to meet my friend Elizabeth." The woman stood to greet Emily. She was a lady around 60, with neatly styled grey hair, wearing an elegant suit and understated but clearly expensive jewelry. There was something in her posture that exuded authority and refinement. "So, this is the famous Emily," Elizabeth said with a warm smile. "Your grandma never stops talking about you. She says you're a very special girl." Emily greeted politely, but felt awkward in the presence of such an elegant woman in her modest home. "How was school today?" asked Grandma Faith. "It was fine, Grandma," replied Emily, not wanting to ruin the special moment of the visit. Elizabeth observed the girl carefully. She noticed the stains on her blouse, the tiredness in her eyes, but also her respectful posture and the affectionate way she treated her grandmother. "Faith told me you're an excellent student," said Elizabeth. "I try my best," Emily replied modestly. "And which school do you attend?" "Washington Elementary School here in the neighborhood." Elizabeth and Grandma Faith continued talking while Emily prepared a snack for them. The girl noticed something different in her grandmother's demeanor. She seemed livelier, more animated than she had been in months. As they spoke, Emily caught fragments of their shared past. Apparently, when they were young, Grandma Faith had helped Elizabeth through a very difficult time in her life. Elizabeth had always promised to repay the kindness, but they lost touch when she moved to Washington, D.C. for work. "And you, Elizabeth? What do you do in the capital?" Emily asked curiously. "I work in law, dear. I have an office there." "Wow, that's so interesting. You must be really smart." Elizabeth smiled at the girl's genuine admiration. "Intelligence helps, but determination matters most, and you seem to have plenty of that." They talked for another hour before Elizabeth announced she had to leave. "Faith, it was wonderful seeing you again, and Emily, it was a pleasure meeting you." "Elizabeth, won't you stay for dinner?" Grandma Faith offered. "Not today, but I promise to visit again soon." "Actually," she hesitated for a moment, "I'd like to get to know your daily life better. Maybe I could join Emily at school one of these days." Emily's stomach twisted. The thought of someone so elegant witnessing how she was treated at school terrified her. "You don't have to trouble yourself," she said quickly. "It's no trouble at all. I've always been curious about how neighborhood schools are these days." Grandma Faith seemed to like the idea. "That would be lovely, Elizabeth. Emily always says she loves school." Emily forced a smile, but inside she was panicking. If Elizabeth went to school, she'd see how teacher Jennifer treated her. And if she told Grandma? Grandma Faith would worry and blame herself for not being able to protect her granddaughter. After Elizabeth left, Emily helped her grandmother get ready for bed. "She seems really kind, Grandma. Elizabeth has always been special. When we were young, she went through such hard times. Her husband left her when she was pregnant, and his family tried to take everything from her. I helped however I could back then." "And after?" "She went to law school, raised her daughter alone, and built a brilliant career. She's always been so determined." Emily was amazed by the story. Elizabeth had overcome so much and succeeded through sheer determination. It was inspiring. That night, as she tried to sleep, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the visit. Elizabeth had brought a new energy into the house, but also the fear of her coming to school. The next morning, Emily followed her usual routine. She woke up early, took care of Grandma, tidied the house, and got ready for school. This time, she managed to avoid spilling water on herself, but she was still a little late because Grandma Faith had been unwell overnight and needed extra care in the morning. When she walked into the classroom, Jennifer Thompson was writing on the board. She turned when she heard the door open. "Guess who's late again?" she said with a smirk. Emily murmured an apology and walked to her seat. She expected the teacher to make her usual comments and then ignore her, but Jennifer seemed particularly irritated that day. "You know, Emily, I'm starting to think you do this on purpose. Showing up late, coming in dirty, making up stories about a sick grandma. Don't you understand you're disrupting the other students' education?" "I don't make up stories," Emily replied softly. "Oh, really? Then explain this. If your grandma is so sick, why don't you live with your parents? Where are they?" The question caught Emily off guard. It was something she rarely talked about, even with her grandma. They're not here anymore." "Aha, Another mysterious story. They left you with your grandma and disappeared, is that it? Emily felt her cheeks grow hot. The subject was painful, and she didn't like talking about it. My parents had an accident when I was little, she said, her voice barely audible. The room fell silent. Some students exchanged uncomfortable glances. Even Jennifer seemed to hesitate for a moment, but quickly regained her composure. Well, that doesn't change the fact that you need to learn responsibility. Tragedies happen to everyone, but that's no excuse for not following the rules. Sophia, who was sitting a few desks ahead, turned to look at Emily with sympathy. Other students also seemed moved by the revelation, but no one dared to say anything. The class continued in a tense atmosphere. Jennifer kept her stern demeanor, but some of her usual sarcastic remarks felt forced. When Emily raised her hand to answer a history question, the teacher ignored her as always, but this time a few students murmured in protest. During recess, Sophia approached Emily right away. "I'm so sorry about your parents," she said sincerely. "Thank you. I was really young when it happened, so I don't remember much about them. My grandma has always taken care of me." "And now you take care of her. That's really sweet. It's the least I can do. She's always been everything to me." Other kids started gathering around. Some offered words of support, others asked respectful questions about her situation. For the first time since starting at that school, Emily felt less alone. "Teacher Jennifer shouldn't treat you like that," said a boy named Ryan. "It's not fair. Especially now that we know you really do take care of your grandma," added a girl named Olivia. Emily was touched by the support, but also worried. "Please don't do anything. I don't want more trouble." "But you shouldn't have to go through that," Sophia insisted. "It's okay. I'm used to it." Truthfully, it wasn't okay. The daily humiliations hurt deeply, especially when they questioned her honesty about her grandma's condition. But Emily had learned that complaining only made things worse. The rest of the day followed the usual pattern. Jennifer continued ignoring Emily during lessons, making occasional remarks about punctuality and hygiene. When school ended, Emily was eager to get home and check on her grandma. As she opened the front door, she found Grandma Faith in the kitchen, trying to prepare something to eat. "Grandma, you shouldn't be on your feet," Emily said, rushing to help her. "I'm feeling better today, sweetheart. Aunt Elizabeth's visit really cheered me up." "That's good. But still, let me finish making lunch." While cooking, Emily told her grandma about her day at school, leaving out the unpleasant parts as she always did. "Teacher Jennifer taught us about US history today. It was really interesting. You've always been such a studious girl. I'm sure you have a bright future ahead of you." Emily smiled, but inside she wondered how she could have a bright future when she couldn't even have a decent present at school. That afternoon, as she helped her grandma with her physical therapy exercises, the phone rang. It was unusual for them to receive calls, so Emily answered with curiosity. "Hello? Emily? It's Elizabeth. How are you, dear?" "Hi, Aunt Elizabeth. I'm fine, thank you." "Great. Listen, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday and I'd really love to visit your school. Would you mind if I came by tomorrow?" Emily's heart raced. This was exactly what she feared. "Oh, you don't need to trouble yourself. The school is really simple, nothing too interesting." "It's no trouble at all. In fact, I'm very curious. What time do you start?" Emily hesitated. She couldn't lie, but she also didn't want Elizabeth to see how she was humiliated in front of the class. "At 7:30 in the morning." "Perfect. I'll be there at 7:20. We can go in together." "Aunt Elizabeth, are you sure? It's just... Well, the school is very different from the private schools in Washington, D.C. Sweetheart, I went to a public school when I was young. I'm sure I'll feel right at home." There was no escaping it. Emily had to agree, but she spent the rest of the day with a knot in her stomach. "Who were you talking to?" Grandma Faith asked when Emily returned to the room. "It was Aunt Elizabeth. She wants to visit my school tomorrow." "How wonderful. She's always been very interested in education. I'm sure she'll be impressed with you." Emily forced a smile, but inside she was panicking. How would she explain to Elizabeth the way she was treated? And worse, how would she hide it from her grandma if Elizabeth decided to mention the humiliation? That night, Emily barely slept. She imagined every possible embarrassing scenario for the next day. She decided she'd try to keep Elizabeth away from the classroom, maybe just show her the courtyard and hallways. The next morning, Emily got up even earlier, determined to look impeccable for the visit. She took extra care with her grandma, showered twice, and picked her least worn-out outfit. At 7:15, she was waiting at the school entrance when a sleek car parked out front. Elizabeth stepped out, dressed in a flawless business suit and carrying a leather briefcase. "Good morning, Emily. You look lovely today." "Good morning, Aunt Elizabeth. Thank you for coming." "My pleasure. So how about showing me your school?" Emily began a tour of the hallways, explaining the different rooms and activities. Elizabeth asked interested questions and complimented the facilities, even though they were clearly simple compared to what she was used to. "And your classroom?" "I'd love to meet your teacher." This was exactly what Emily feared. She tried to think of an excuse but couldn't. "Of course, let's go." They arrived at the classroom door just as the bell rang. Jennifer Thompson was organizing materials on her desk when she looked up and saw Emily accompanied by an elegant woman. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. "Good morning," Elizabeth said confidently as she entered the room. "I'm Elizabeth Murray, an attorney. I'm here to accompany my niece Emily for her school day." Jennifer felt as if the floor had vanished beneath her feet. An attorney? A niece? The dirty girl she humiliated daily had an elegant lawyer for an aunt. "Good morning," Jennifer stammered, quickly standing up. "It's a pleasure to have you. I'm Jennifer Thompson, Emily's teacher." "The pleasure is mine," Elizabeth replied with a polite smile, though her sharp eyes were already taking in everything around her. "Emily always speaks very highly of the school, and especially of your classes." Jennifer looked at Emily in surprise. The girl always spoke well of her. That didn't make sense considering how she treated her. "Oh, of course, Emily is a very special student." "Yes, I imagine she is. May I sit in on the class?" "I promise not to be a distraction." Of course," Jennifer pointed to a chair near her desk. "Make yourself at home." The other students began filing into the room, whispering curiously about the elegant visitor. Sophia glanced at Emily with a questioning look, but Emily only offered a strained smile. The lesson began and Jennifer behaved completely differently than usual. Her voice was sweeter, her gestures kinder. When Emily raised her hand to answer a question, for the first time in months, the teacher called on her. "Yes, Emily, you may answer." Emily was so surprised it took her a moment to find the words. "The answer is 42. Very good. Excellent answer." Elizabeth watched everything carefully, noting not just the teacher's behavior, but also Emily's genuine surprise at being called on and praised. During recess, Elizabeth walked with Emily to the courtyard. "Your teacher seems very kind," Elizabeth remarked. "Yes, she is," Emily replied hesitantly. "You looked surprised when she called on you to answer the question." Emily didn't know what to say. She didn't want to lie to Elizabeth, but she also didn't want to cause trouble. "It's just, sometimes she calls on me, sometimes she doesn't." Elizabeth sensed there was something Emily wasn't saying, but decided not to press further just then. Sophia approached them during recess. "Hi, Emily. Who's this?" "This is my Aunt Elizabeth. Auntie, this is Sophia, my friend." "Nice to meet you, Sophia. Emily tells me you two are good friends." "Yes, we are. Emily is really great, but—" Sophia stopped mid-sentence, remembering her promise not to tell anyone about Emily's situation. "But what?" Elizabeth asked gently. "Nothing. It's not important," Sophia said quickly. Elizabeth noticed the hesitation, but again chose not to push. She was beginning to realize there were layers to this situation that weren't being revealed. When they returned to the classroom, the afternoon lesson continued in the same artificially kind tone. Jennifer praised Emily multiple times, included her in activities, and even smiled at her a few times. At the end of the day, Elizabeth said goodbye to the teacher. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Teacher Jennifer. Emily is very lucky to have such a dedicated educator." The pleasure was mine. Emily truly is an exemplary student. Emily nearly choked hearing that. Exemplary student? It was the first time she'd ever heard the teacher refer to her without disdain. Outside the school, Elizabeth invited Emily to grab a snack at a nearby bakery. "So, how was your day? Different than usual?" Emily stirred the juice she'd ordered, thinking how to respond. "It was interesting. Your teacher seemed very attentive to you. Is that normal?" Emily knew she couldn't outright lie, but she also didn't want to cause problems. "She has her good days and her bad days." "I see. And today was a good day?" "Yes, definitely a good day." Elizabeth studied the girl for a moment. Her experience as a lawyer had taught her to read between the lines, and it was becoming clear Emily wasn't telling her something. "Emily, can I ask you a direct question?" "Sure." "Does your teacher always treat you the way she did today?" Emily hesitated. She didn't want to lie, but she was also afraid of the consequences of the truth. "Why do you ask?" "Because I have experience with people, and I noticed a few things today. The way you were surprised when she called on you to answer, how your friend Sophia started to say something and then stopped, the sudden change in the teacher's behavior when I mentioned I'm a lawyer." Emily felt her cheeks grow hot. Elizabeth was more observant than she had imagined. "I don't want to cause trouble," she said softly. "Sweetheart, you wouldn't cause trouble by telling the truth. Trouble is caused when people act wrongly." Emily looked at Elizabeth for a long moment. There was something in her eyes that conveyed reassurance and understanding. She isn't usually this kind to me," she finally admitted. "Can you tell me more?" And then, for the first time, Emily told the whole truth. She spoke about the daily humiliations, the comments about her hygiene, how she was systematically ignored and isolated from the other students. She talked about the times she tried to explain her home situation and was accused of making up stories. Elizabeth listened in silence, her face growing more serious by the minute. "How long has this been going on?" "Since I started in her class at the beginning of the year." "And you never told your grandma?" "No, please don't tell her. She already has enough to worry about. And if she finds out, she'll feel guilty for not being able to protect me." Elizabeth understood Emily's concern, but she also knew the situation couldn't continue like this. "Emily, what's happening to you at school is unacceptable. A teacher has no right to humiliate a student no matter the circumstances. But if you complain, it might get worse for me. Not if you have the right protection. And now you do." Emily looked at Elizabeth, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I won't let this continue. Your grandma helped me a lot when I needed it, and now it's my turn to help you." "But no buts, sweetheart. You deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and I'll make sure that happens." That night, Elizabeth went home thinking about everything she had learned. As a human rights lawyer, she knew exactly what legal options were available, but she also understood the approach had to be careful to avoid making things worse for Emily. She decided she needed more information before taking action. The next day, she called the school asking to speak with the academic coordinator. "Hello, Washington Elementary. I'd like to speak with the academic coordinator." "One moment, please." Margaret Wilson speaking. "Good morning, this is Elizabeth Murray, an attorney. I visited the school yesterday accompanying my niece Emily Parker from teacher Jennifer Thompson's class." "Oh yes, I remember you. How can I help?" "I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss some concerns regarding Emily's educational development." Margaret hesitated. As an experienced coordinator, she could tell when there were issues behind seemingly simple requests. "Of course we can arrange that. Is there something specific troubling you?" "I'd prefer to discuss it in person if you don't mind. When would be convenient?" "How about this afternoon at 3? "Perfect, I'll be there." Elizabeth arrived at the school promptly at 3, dressed even more formally than the day before. Margaret greeted her in her office, a woman in her 60s with kind but attentive eyes. "It's a pleasure to see you again, Ms. Murray. How can I assist you?" "Thank you for meeting with me. I want to talk about the treatment my niece Emily has been receiving at school." Margaret immediately grew alert. She had already noticed some situations involving Emily and teacher Jennifer that troubled her. Could you be more specific? First, I'd like to know, are you aware of Emily's family situation? I know she lives with her grandmother who is ill, and that she lost her parents when she was little. Exactly. A 10-year-old child who is the primary caregiver for an elderly woman with serious health problems, a situation that demands far more responsibility and maturity than would be normal for her age. Yes, it's a delicate situation. And are you aware of how teacher Jennifer has been treating Emily? Margaret sighed. That was the question she feared. Can I be honest with you? Please. I've noticed a few situations that troubled me. The way teacher Jennifer sometimes speaks to Emily doesn't seem appropriate. Can you give me examples? Comments about hygiene in front of the class, isolating the child, systematically ignoring her when she tries to participate in lessons. And why wasn't there any intervention? Margaret felt embarrassed. I try to step in when I can, but teacher Jennifer is, let's say, resistant to feedback. And I admit I should have been firmer. I see. And are you aware that yesterday, in my presence, the teacher's behavior was completely different? I'm not surprised. Some people drastically change their behavior when they feel observed by authority figures. So you acknowledge there's a problem? Yes, I do, and I feel responsible for not acting more decisively before. Elizabeth appreciated the coordinator's honesty. Well, now we'll take action. I want to understand what the school's protocols are for handling discrimination and bullying situations. We have clear policies against any form of discrimination. The problem is enforcing them when the aggressor is a faculty member. What disciplinary options are available? For serious cases, we can issue warnings, suspension, or even termination, depending on the severity and frequency of incidents. And what constitutes a serious case? Public humiliation of students, discrimination based on socioeconomic conditions, creating a hostile learning environment. All those elements are present in how Emily has been treated. Margaret nodded sadly. Yes, they are. So what's the next step? We need to document the incidents and confront the teacher. But I should warn you, this might make things even harder for Emily, at least at first. That's why I need your assurance that the girl will be protected throughout the process. You have my word. Good. I'd also like to propose some additional measures to support Emily. Such as, first, I'd like her temporarily transferred to another class with a teacher more sensitive to her situation. That can be arranged. Second, I'd like to organize additional support for the family, not charity, but educational and health resources to improve their quality of life. The school has partnerships with some organizations that could help. Excellent. And third, I'd like to implement a training program for all faculty on social sensitivity and identifying students in vulnerable situations. Margaret was impressed by Elizabeth's structured approach. Those are all excellent suggestions. I can start implementing them right away. Good. Now, about teacher Jennifer. Yes, I want her confronted about her behavior, but in a way that helps her understand the gravity of her actions without becoming overly defensive. Do you have any suggestions on how to approach this? Actually, yes. I'd like to propose a meeting with her, you, me, and the school principal. That way she'll see the situation is being taken seriously, but also have a chance to explain herself. When? Tomorrow, if possible. The sooner we act, the better for everyone involved. Margaret agreed, and they scheduled the meeting for the next day at 4 in the afternoon, after classes ended. Meanwhile, Emily was experiencing one of the most confusing days of her school life. Jennifer continued to treat her with artificial kindness, but now other teachers also seemed to be paying special attention to her. During recess, Sophia approached her. Emily, is something going on? Everyone's talking about your aunt who came yesterday. It's nothing serious, she just wanted to see the school. But teacher Jennifer is acting so different. It's weird. Maybe she's just having a good day. Or maybe she's afraid of something. Sophia was more perceptive than Emily gave her credit for. The girl had noticed that whenever someone in authority showed up at school, some teacher's behavior changed drastically. Afraid of what? I don't know. But my mum always says people who act differently when visitors are around have something to hide. Emily grew thoughtful. Maybe Sophia was right. Maybe Jennifer's change in behavior wasn't just a coincidence. That afternoon when she got home, she found Elizabeth talking with her grandma again. "Hi, Aunt Elizabeth. I didn't expect to see you today." "Hi, sweetheart. I came to chat a little more with your grandma. How was school today?" "It was fine. Teacher Jennifer kept being nice to me." Grandma Faith smiled. "That's wonderful. I always knew you'd earn your teacher's respect with your hard work." Elizabeth and Emily exchanged a glance. Both knew the teacher's kindness had different motivations than Grandma Faith imagined. "Faith, I need to talk to you about something," Elizabeth said. "Of course. What is it?" "It's about Emily's situation at school. There are a few things that need to be addressed." Emily's heart raced. Was Elizabeth going to tell her grandma everything? "What kind of things?" Grandma Faith asked, concerned. "Nothing serious," Elizabeth said quickly, noticing the panic in Emily's eyes. "Just some administrative changes that could help her education." "What kind of changes?" "Well, I found out there are support programs for students in special circumstances. I'd like to enroll Emily." "How wonderful. Emily's always been such a hard worker. Any extra help would be great." "Exactly. And there are also some healthcare resources that could help you, Faith. Home physical therapy, regular medical checkups." Grandma Faith grew emotional. "Elizabeth, you don't have to do this for us." "Of course I do. You helped me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to return the favor." Emily watched the conversation with mixed feelings. On one hand, she was grateful Elizabeth hadn't mentioned the humiliation at school. On the other, she felt guilty hiding the truth from her grandma. After Elizabeth left, Emily helped her grandma get ready for bed. "Your Aunt Elizabeth really is special," Grandma Faith remarked. "She's always been so generous." "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, my dear." "What was Aunt Elizabeth like when you were younger?" "She was a very determined woman, but she went through some hard times. Her husband left her when she was pregnant, and his family tried to take everything she had." "How did you help her?" "I gave her a place to stay when she had nowhere to go, helped take care of her daughter while she studied law. Those were tough years, but she never gave up." "And then?" "Then she graduated, got a good job, and built a brilliant career. She always said she'd repay me one day." Emily now understood why Elizabeth was so determined to help them. It wasn't just kindness, it was deep gratitude. What happened to her daughter? She grew up and became a doctor. Elizabeth was always so proud of her. That night, Emily slept better than she had in weeks. For the first time in a long while, she felt she wasn't alone in facing her problems. The next morning, she arrived at school with an odd sense of anticipation. Jennifer continued her artificially kind behavior, but Emily noticed the teacher seemed tense, as if waiting for something. During recess, Margaret Wilson approached Emily. "Emily, could I speak with you for a moment?" "Of course, Teacher Margaret." They walked to a quieter corner of the yard. "How have you been feeling lately at school?" The question caught Emily off guard. The coordinator had never asked about her feelings before. "I'm fine." "Are you sure? If anything's bothering you, you can tell me." Emily hesitated. Had Elizabeth spoken to the coordinator? "Why are you asking?" "Because I care about all my students, and I want to make sure you feel safe and comfortable here." "I do." Margaret sensed Emily wasn't ready to open up yet, but planted the seed. "Well, if you ever want to talk about anything, my door is always open. And I want you to know you're a very special student. Your dedication and responsibility are admirable." They were the first genuine words of encouragement Emily had received from a school staff member in a long time. "Thank you, Teacher Margaret." "You're welcome, dear. And remember, you deserve to be treated with respect always." That afternoon at 4 o'clock, the promised meeting took place in the principal's office. Present were Elizabeth, Margaret, Principal Rose Adams, and Jennifer Thompson. Jennifer walked into the room visibly nervous, unsure why she'd been called to a meeting with Emily's aunt lawyer. "Teacher Jennifer, thank you for coming," said Principal Rose. "This meeting was requested by Dr. Elizabeth Murray to discuss some concerns regarding student Emily Parker." "Of course. Jennifer replied, trying to sound confident. Emily is a good student. What's the issue? Elizabeth took the floor. Teacher Jennifer, I'd like to discuss the teaching methods you've been using with Emily. Teaching methods? I don't understand. Specifically, I'd like to understand your approach to students facing socioeconomic challenges. Jennifer grew uneasy. Well, I treat all students equally. Interesting. Because yesterday, when I visited your classroom, I noticed very specific behavior from you toward Emily. I don't know what you mean. I saw you include her in activities, praise her, and show interest in her answers. It was very positive behavior. Jennifer relaxed slightly, thinking she was being complimented. Well, yes, Emily is a dedicated student. Exactly. So imagine my surprise when I learned this behavior was the exception, not the rule. The room fell heavy with silence. Jennifer paled. I don't know what you're talking about. Teacher Jennifer, Margaret interjected. We've received reports that Emily has been systematically humiliated and isolated in your classroom. That's a lie. Who said that? Emily herself in a conversation with me, Elizabeth said calmly, and it's been confirmed through observations by the coordination team. Jennifer looked at Margaret indignantly. Margaret, you know I'm a dedicated teacher. I'd never humiliate a student. Jennifer, let's be honest here, Margaret said firmly. I've personally witnessed several instances where you made inappropriate comments about Emily's hygiene in front of the class. Hygiene is important in a school environment. Yes, but publicly shaming a child isn't the right way to address it, said Principal Rose, especially when you haven't investigated the reasons behind the situation. What causes? The girl comes to school dirty. The girl, said Elizabeth with controlled voice, is a 10-year-old child who takes care of a sick grandmother all by herself. She wakes up at 5 in the morning every day to bathe her grandmother, prepare medications, clean the house, and still walk miles to school. Jennifer fell silent, processing the information. I didn't know. Because you never bothered to ask, said Margaret. Instead, you chose to make judgments and humiliate the child. Besides, Elizabeth continued, even if there were no special circumstances, humiliating a student for their appearance is never acceptable. Jennifer began to get defensive. Look, I've worked as a teacher for 15 years. I've dealt with all kinds of situations. Sometimes you have to be firm so students learn responsibility. Firm is different from cruel, said Principal Rose, and based on what I'm hearing, your behavior crossed the line from educational firmness. And now, Jennifer asked, realizing she was in trouble, are you going to fire me for trying to keep order in the classroom? No one's talking about firing you yet, said Margaret, but changes need to happen. Elizabeth leaned forward. Teacher Jennifer, I'll be direct with you. As a lawyer, I could file a lawsuit against you and the school for discrimination and creating a hostile learning environment for Emily. Jennifer swallowed hard. But, Elizabeth continued, I'd rather resolve this constructively, if you're willing to cooperate. What do you want? First, a formal apology to Emily acknowledging your behavior was inappropriate. Second, said Margaret, your participation in a training program on social sensitivity and inclusive teaching methods. And third, added Principal Rose, an observation period where your interactions with all students will be monitored. Jennifer looked around the room. She was clearly at a disadvantage and knew her options were limited. What if I refuse? Then we'll proceed with formal disciplinary measures, said Principal Rose, which could include suspension or termination, depending on the severity of the evidence. What evidence? Margaret opened a folder she'd brought. Testimonies from students who witnessed your humiliation of Emily, observation records from me and other staff, and a detailed report from Dr. Elizabeth about the drastic change in your behavior when you felt observed by an authority figure. Jennifer realized she had no choice. Fine, I accept the terms. Excellent, said Elizabeth. Now, I'd like to schedule the apology for tomorrow, in front of the class. In front of the class? Jennifer looked horrified. Yes, just as the humiliation was public, the apology should be too. But that's going to be embarrassing. Exactly, said Margaret. Now you might understand how Emily felt all these months. The next day, Emily arrived at school with no idea what had happened in the meeting. Elizabeth had decided not to tell her yet, wanting things to unfold naturally. Class began as usual. with Jennifer seeming even more tense than the day before. Gradually, the students noticed something was different. Then, around 10 in the morning, Jennifer stopped the lesson and walked to where Emily was sitting. "Emily, could you come up here, please?" Emily's stomach tightened. What had she done wrong now? Reluctantly, she stood and walked to the front of the room where Jennifer waited. All the students watched in silence. "Emily," Jennifer began, her voice shaky, "I have something very important to say to you." The girl braced herself, expecting another humiliation. I want to apologize." Emily blinked, thinking she had misheard. "What?" "I want to apologize for all the inappropriate treatment you've received from me this school year." A murmur spread through the classroom. Students exchanged surprised glances. "I made cruel comments about your appearance and personal situation. I isolated you from the other students. I ignored your attempts to participate in class. And worst of all, I questioned your honesty when you tried to explain your family situation." Emily was speechless. It was the last thing she expected to hear. "Now I know about the tremendous responsibilities you carry at home, caring for your sick grandmother. I know about the sacrifices you make every day before coming to school. And I know that despite all the obstacles, you remain a dedicated and hard-working student." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, but this time they weren't from humiliation or sadness. "You didn't deserve any of what I did. In fact, you deserved the opposite. You deserved support, understanding, and recognition for your courage and determination." The room was completely silent. Some students were visibly moved. "There's no excuse for my behavior. It was cruel, unfair, and completely unbecoming of an educator." Jennifer paused for a moment, visibly struggling with her emotions. "Emily, can you forgive me?" Emily looked at the teacher for a long moment. She could see genuine remorse in her eyes, but she also knew emotional wounds wouldn't heal instantly. I accept your apology," she finally said, her voice quiet but firm. "Thank you," Jennifer replied, tears streaming down her face. "And I promise that from now on, you'll receive the respect and consideration you've always deserved." When Emily returned to her seat, the entire class erupted in spontaneous applause. Sophia was crying with emotion, as were several other students. During recess, Emily was surrounded by classmates who wanted to express their support. "We always knew you were special," Ryan said. "You're so brave," Olivia added. "And the teacher was completely wrong," Sophia said, hugging her friend. For the first time since she had started at that school, Emily felt truly accepted and valued by her peers. Margaret appeared in the yard during recess and approached Emily. "How are you feeling?" "Confused," Emily admitted, "but also relieved." "That's normal. Big changes always bring mixed feelings." "Why did this happen? Why did she change her mind about me?" "Because good people stood up for you. And because sometimes people need to be confronted with the reality of their actions before they can change." "Did Aunt Elizabeth have something to do with it?" "Your aunt is a very wise and determined woman. She loves you very much." That afternoon, when Emily got home, Elizabeth was there again, waiting to hear about her day. "So, how was school today?" "Different," Emily said, still processing everything. "Teacher Jennifer apologized to me in front of the whole class." Grandma Faith looked confused. "Apologized? Why?" Emily glanced at Elizabeth, who nodded encouragingly. "Grandma, there are some things I haven't told you about school." And then, for the first time, Emily told her grandmother the whole truth. She spoke about the humiliation, the isolation, the cruel comments. Grandma Faith grew more and more indignant and sad. "My dear, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I didn't want to worry you. You already have so many problems. Your problems are my problems. You should never have gone through this alone." Elizabeth gently intervened. "Faith, Emily was trying to protect you, but now we don't have to worry about it anymore. The situation has been resolved." "How?" "Let's say the school understood that changes were necessary." Grandma Faith looked at Elizabeth with gratitude. "You did this, didn't you?" "We did this. You raised a brave and resilient girl, and I just made sure she got the recognition she deserved." In the weeks that followed, Emily's school life changed dramatically. Jennifer kept her promise and treated her with respect and attention. Most importantly, she began actively including her in classroom activities. The support program Elizabeth had arranged also started making a difference. Grandma Faith was receiving home physical therapy, which significantly improved her mobility. A nurse's aide came 3 times a week to help with basic care, giving Emily more time to focus on her studies. Sophia became an even closer friend, and other students also began reaching out. For the first time, Emily felt like part of the school community. Jennifer, meanwhile, was attending training sessions on social inclusion and sensitive teaching methods. The process was difficult for her, forcing her to confront biases she didn't even know she had. During one of the training sessions, she was asked about her motivations for becoming a teacher. "I always wanted to make a difference in children's lives," she answered. "And do you think you were making a difference in Emily's life?" The question hit her like a punch to the gut. "No, I was causing harm." "Why? What made you treat a vulnerable child that way?" Jennifer thought deeply before answering. I think I was afraid that if I made allowances for her situation, other students would use it as an excuse, afraid of losing control of the classroom." "And how do you feel about that now?" "Ashamed, disgusted. That girl was doing more for her family than many adults do, and I punished her for it." The process of self-discovery was painful, but necessary. 2 months after the incident, the school organized a science fair. Emily decided to participate with a project on medicinal plants inspired by the remedies her grandmother used. She worked tirelessly on the project, researching in the school library and interviewing elderly neighbors about traditional home remedies. Elizabeth helped with some technical aspects, but made sure the work was entirely Emily's. On the day of the fair, Grandma Faith managed to come to school for the first time in months, supported by a wheelchair borrowed from the physical therapist. "I'm so proud of you," she said, looking at Emily's well-prepared project. "I couldn't have done it without your teachings about plants, Grandma." Emily's project impressed everyone. She had not only researched the medicinal properties of the plants, but also interviewed people in the community and created a small herb garden at the school. Jennifer nervously approached Emily's display. Since the apology, the two had maintained a respectful relationship, but there was still underlying tension. "Emily, your project is exceptional." "Thank you, teacher. Can I ask you a personal question?" Emily hesitated but agreed. "Do you truly forgive me, or do you still feel angry?" Emily thought carefully before answering. "It still hurts sometimes when I remember what happened, but I see you're trying to change, and that means a lot to me. Thank you for your honesty, and for giving me a chance to be a better teacher." Everyone deserves a second chance, right? Jennifer smiled genuinely for the first time in months. "You're very wise for a 10-year-old. My grandma always says hardships teach us about life faster than we'd like." At the end of the fair, the results were announced. To everyone's surprise, Emily's project won first place in its category. When they went up on stage to receive the award, Emily dedicated the victory to her grandmother. "This award is for my grandma, who taught me about plants, about care, and most importantly, about never giving up." The audience applauded enthusiastically. Grandma Faith was moved to tears in her wheelchair, while Elizabeth proudly recorded everything. That night at home, the three celebrated with a special dinner Elizabeth had brought. "Emily, I have a proposal for you," said Elizabeth. "What kind of proposal?" "I'd like to fund your education at a private school where you'd have more educational opportunities." Emily was surprised. "But I like my school now, and my friends are there." "Are you sure? It would be a great opportunity." "I'm sure. Besides, if I leave now, it would seem like I'm running away from problems. I want to stay and show I can thrive where I am." Elizabeth smiled, admiring the girl's maturity. "In that case, how about private tutoring to help you develop your potential even further?" "That would be great." Grandma Faith watched the conversation with gratitude. Seeing her granddaughter receive opportunities she could never have provided alone was a dream come true. Months passed, and the transformation in all their lives was remarkable. Emily became one of the top students at school, not just in grades but also in leadership among her peers. She started a project raising awareness about socio-economic diversity, helping other students in difficult situations. Jennifer became a completely different teacher. The training she had undergone made her more aware of all her students' needs. She implemented more inclusive teaching methods and became an advocate for vulnerable students. Grandma Faith, with regular medical support, regained much of her independence. She was able to resume some crafting work at home, bringing in modest but meaningful income for the family. Elizabeth became a constant presence in their lives, not as a savior, but as a true aunt. She helped where needed, but always respected the family's independence and dignity. A year after the original incident, the school held a graduation ceremony for students completing elementary school. Emily wasn't graduating yet, but was invited to speak as a representative of the younger students. She took the stage wearing a simple but clean dress, which Elizabeth had bought but Emily had chosen herself. "My name is Emily Parker, and a year ago, I never imagined I'd be here speaking to you today." She told her story without going into specific details about the humiliations, instead speaking about overcoming challenges, forgiveness, and second chances. "I learned that our financial situation doesn't define who we are. I learned that caring for those we love is a privilege, not an obligation. And I learned that we can all change and grow no matter our age." She looked directly at Jennifer, who was seated in the audience. "I also learned about the power of forgiveness, not the kind that forgets what happened, but the kind that allows us all to move forward and become better people." The audience fell silent for a moment before erupting in applause. After the ceremony, Jennifer approached Emily. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For letting me be a better person. For teaching me it's never too late to change." "Thank you for changing," Emily replied. "It showed me people can surprise us." Margaret, who'd observed the entire transformation, joined them. "You two have given me one of the greatest lessons of my career," she said. "About the importance of intervening when we see injustices and about the power of redemption." That evening at home, Emily was talking with her grandma as they prepared dinner together, something they hadn't done in over a year thanks to Grandma Faith's improved health. "Grandma, do you think everything we went through was worth it?" "What do you mean?" "All the suffering, all the humiliation. Do you think it was worth enduring to get where we are today?" Grandma Faith stopped chopping vegetables and looked at her granddaughter. "My dear, I'll never say you deserved to suffer. No one deserves to be humiliated or mistreated. But if it hadn't happened, I never would have really gotten to know Aunt Elizabeth. Teacher Jennifer wouldn't have changed." "Emily, listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Suffering isn't necessary for growth. You grew despite the suffering, not because of it." "What do you mean?" "You've always been brave, smart, and determined. Those qualities didn't come from the humiliation you endured. They came from the love we built together, the values I tried to teach you, and your own inner strength." Emily thought about that for a moment. "Then why did things have to be so hard?" "Because unfortunately, there are people in this world who judge others without knowing their stories. But there are also people like Elizabeth who use their power to protect the vulnerable. And people like Teacher Jennifer, who can change when faced with the truth." "Exactly. The world is complicated, my flower. There are good people and bad people, and many in between, still figuring out who they want to be." 2 years had passed since the beginning of the story. Emily was now in 7th grade, excelling academically and leading several social projects at school. She had become a voice for other students in vulnerable situations. Jennifer had been promoted to assistant coordinator, recognized for her transformation and innovative work in social inclusion. She often shared her story at educational conferences, always crediting Emily for changing her perspective. Grandma Faith, now 74, was healthier than she'd been in years. She had resumed her craft work and even sold her pieces at a local fair Elizabeth had helped organize. Elizabeth remained a constant presence in the family's life, but now more as a true aunt than a savior. She had partially retired from law to focus on volunteer work in education. One Sunday afternoon, the four of them were gathered in the small house that had become a home full of love and hope. "You know," said Emily, now 12 and visibly more mature, "sometimes I think about what my life would have been like if none of that had happened." "And?" asked Elizabeth. "I think I'd be a different person. Not necessarily better or worse, just different." "How so?" Grandma Faith wanted to know. "Well, I wouldn't understand how important it is to have people who believe in you. I wouldn't realize how small acts of kindness can change everything. And I wouldn't know that people can truly change." Jennifer, who had been invited for lunch, something that had become a monthly tradition, smiled shyly. "You changed my life too, Emily. You taught me it's never too late to become the person you should have always been." "I think we've all learned something," said Margaret, who had also become part of the extended family. "What did you learn, Aunt Margaret?" Emily asked. "I learned that intervening isn't optional when we see injustice. I learned that silence makes us complicit, and I learned that one brave child can change an entire school." Grandma Faith wiped away a tear that had formed in her eye. "And I learned that I didn't raise my granddaughter alone. That there's a community of good people willing to help, and that accepting help doesn't diminish our dignity." "What a beautiful lesson, Grandma," said Emily, hugging her grandmother. "And you, Elizabeth, what did you learn?" asked Jennifer. "I learned that returning kindness isn't an obligation. It's a privilege. I learned that family isn't just blood, it's choice and love. And I learned that investing in a child's future is the best way to honor those who helped us in the past." They sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the depth of what they'd shared. "You know what's funny?" Emily finally said. "What?" they all asked in unison. "Everyone here is over 60 except me. But I feel like you're all my sisters." They all laughed, and the afternoon continued with stories, plans for the future, and the certainty that they'd built something special together. A few months later, the school received an unexpected visit. A journalist had heard about the transformation that had taken place there and wanted to write a piece on inclusive education. "I'd like to interview the student and teacher involved in the situation," she told Margaret. "I'll ask if they're willing to talk." Both Emily and Jennifer agreed, as long as the story was told respectfully and with an educational purpose. During the interview, the journalist asked Emily, "What would you say to other children going through similar situations?" Emily thought carefully before answering. "I'd tell them not to keep the pain to themselves. There's always someone willing to help, even when it feels like there isn't, and that our circumstances don't define who we are or how far we can go." "And for teachers who might be in situations like yours?" the journalist asked Jennifer. "I'd tell them to pause and really look at their students, to ask why, instead of just judging, and to remember that our words and actions can either build or destroy a child's future." The article was published a few weeks later and had a big impact. The school began receiving visitors interested in implementing similar social inclusion programs. Emily, now 13, was invited to speak at other schools about her experience. At first, she was nervous, but Elizabeth encouraged her. "Your story could help other children going through what you went through." "But what if I don't know what to say?" "Speak from the heart. Tell your truth. That's always enough." Emily's first talk was at a school similar to hers for an audience of teachers and coordinators. "My name is Emily, and I want to talk to you about the power you hold," she began. "You have the power to make a child feel invisible or special, the power to destroy dreams or build them, the power to perpetuate prejudice or break cycles." The audience was completely attentive. "When I was 10, I thought my future would be limited by my present situation. I thought that because I was poor and had adult responsibilities, I'd never be seen as a normal child. But one person decided to step in, and another decided to change, and others chose to support. And now I'm here speaking to you, not as a victim, but as proof that you can change lives." After the talk, several teachers approached her with tears in their eyes. "Thank you for reminding us why we chose this profession," said an elderly teacher. "Your courage inspires me to be better," said another. That night at home, Emily told her family about the experience. "How did it feel?" Grandma Faith asked. Powerful, Emily replied with a smile. For the first time, I felt like my story could be used to help others, not just define me. That's the true power of overcoming, said Elizabeth, when we turn our pain into purpose. Jennifer, who was present as always at the weekly family gatherings, added, and that's the true power of redemption, when we use our mistakes to teach others not to make the same ones. In the years that followed, Emily continued dividing her time between her studies and public speaking. She developed a special program to identify and support children in vulnerable situations at schools. Jennifer became a recognized expert in inclusive education, working with schools across the region to implement anti-discrimination policies. Grandma Faith, inspired by her granddaughter's courage, began teaching crafts to other seniors in the community, creating a small cooperative that provided income for several families. Elizabeth established a foundation focused on supporting families in situations similar to what Emily had faced, always upholding the principle of preserving dignity while offering opportunities. 5 years after the original incident, Emily was graduating high school as the class speaker. Her chosen family was all in the audience: Grandma Faith, now 77 but still active and proud; Elizabeth, who had become more than an aunt, a second mother; Jennifer, who had become a mentor and friend; and Margaret, who remained a source of wisdom and support. 5 years ago, Emily said in her graduation speech, I was a girl who tried to make herself invisible to avoid humiliation. Today, I stand here speaking to you as someone who has learned that our visibility is our strength. I've learned that we're not defined by where we start, but by how we choose to move forward. I've learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, but it means freeing yourself to grow. And I've learned that one person brave enough to step in can change not just a life, but an entire community. She looked directly at her family in the audience. Gratitude is too small a word to express what I feel for the people who transformed me from a ashamed girl into a young woman proud of her story. But the most important thing I've learned is this: we all have the power to be the person who steps into someone else's life. We can all choose to be the difference between despair and hope for someone else. The audience rose in applause. Grandma Faith cried with pride. Elizabeth recorded every second. Jennifer smiled with tears in her eyes, and Margaret simply shook her head in admiration for the young woman she had watched grow and flourish. After the ceremony, during the celebration, Sophia, who had remained Emily's best friend all these years, approached her. Remember when we were little, and I asked you why you were always late? I remember, Emily smiled. Who would have thought that playground conversation would be part of a story that changed so many lives? It's funny how the most important moments of our lives sometimes start with the simplest things. So what's next for you? I'm going to study education in college. I want to become a teacher and then a curriculum coordinator. I want to make sure no child goes through what I did without someone to stand up for them. And I'm going to study nursing. Remember how my mom always said caring for sick people was hard? I want to help families like yours. That night, after everyone had left, Emily and Grandma Faith sat alone in the living room, as they had so many times over the years. Grandma, can I ask you something? Always my flower. Do you have any regrets about how you raised me? Grandma Faith was surprised by the question. Why do you ask? Because sometimes I wonder if I missed part of my childhood taking care of you, if it made me grow up too fast. Grandma Faith held her granddaughter's hands. Emily, if I could turn back time and have the health to take care of you without you needing to take care of me, I'd do it in a second. I know. But I can't change the past. What I can say is this: you've become the most extraordinary person I know, not because of the hardships you faced, but in spite of them. And you don't feel like I stole your youth. My dear, you gave me something far more valuable than my youth ever could have. You gave me purpose, unconditional love, and the chance to see that I raised someone who makes the world better. They embraced, and Emily knew she was ready for the next chapter of her life. The following fall, Emily started college. Elizabeth offered to pay all her expenses, but Emily insisted on contributing through a scholarship she'd earned and part-time work, giving talks on social inclusion. During her first year studying education, a professor asked the class, "What motivated you to choose education as a career?" Emily raised her hand. "I had a teacher who nearly made me give up on school with her humiliation, and I had others who showed me the transformative power of education built on love and respect." "And what do you want to do differently?" "I want to create systems where vulnerable children are identified and supported, not punished for their circumstances. I want to train teachers to look beyond appearances, and I want every child to feel valued and capable of dreaming big." The professor smiled. "Those are noble aspirations. How do you plan to implement them?" "Through clear inclusion policies, mentorship programs, ongoing teacher training, and support networks for families in vulnerable situations." That night, Emily called home to share about her day. "How was class today?" Grandma Faith asked. "Inspiring. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." "And how are you adjusting to college life?" "Good. I've made some friends, and it's interesting meeting people from such different backgrounds. But you know what surprises me the most?" "What?" "How much my story resonates with others." Several classmates came up after class to share their own experiences with discrimination or family struggles. "Does that surprise you?" "Actually, yes. Sometimes we forget we're not the only ones in the world with problems." "That's an important lesson, my flower. Our struggles make us more empathetic to others' pain." During her college years, Emily stayed close to her chosen family. Jennifer had become principal of her old school and implemented several programs based on their shared experiences. On one visit, Jennifer showed Emily a special room she'd created. "What's this?" Emily asked. "It's the Emily Parker Support Center, a place where students in vulnerable situations can come for help, guidance, or just a safe space to be." Emily was moved. "Why my name?" "Because you taught me that one brave child can change everything, and I want other students to be inspired by your story." "Can I see inside?" The room was warm and inviting, with comfortable couches, a small library, computers for research, and photos on the walls of students who had overcome adversity. "Look at this," Jennifer said, pointing to one wall. It was a mural with the phrase, "Your current situation doesn't determine your final destiny." And below it, a photo of Emily at 10, alongside a recent picture of her graduating high school. "This is beautiful," Emily said, tears in her eyes. "And effective. We've seen a 70% drop in dropout rates since implementing these programs. And the teachers, how did they react to the changes?" "There was resistance at first. Change always brings discomfort. But the results speak for themselves. The students are more engaged, the families more involved, and the teachers themselves feel more professionally fulfilled." During her final years at university, Emily developed her thesis on early identification and support systems for students in situations of social vulnerability. The work was based on her personal experience combined with extensive academic research. "The basic premise," she explained to her advisor, "is that signs of social vulnerability are often misinterpreted as behavioral problems or a lack of educational interest." "And how do you propose changing that?" "Through specific training for educators, clear identification protocols, interinstitutional support networks, and most importantly, a shift in school culture to value the student's full story, not just their surface-level presentation." Her thesis was well received by the review board and later published as a reference in the field. On the day of her university graduation, her entire family was present once again. Grandma Faith, now 81 years old, had insisted on attending despite her increasing mobility limitations. "I'm so proud of you," she told Emily before the ceremony. "None of this would have been possible without you, Grandma." "No, my dear. This was possible because of you. I only planted the seeds. You chose to nurture them and make them bloom." During her speech as the pedagogy class valedictorian, Emily said, "Education isn't just about transmitting knowledge. It's the act of seeing potential where others see problems, offering hope where others see limitations, and believing in futures that don't yet exist, but can be built through love, dedication, and fair opportunities." After graduation, Emily was hired as the pedagogical coordinator at a school in an underprivileged neighborhood in the city. It was exactly where she wanted to be. On her first day of work, she encountered a situation that felt familiar. A 9-year-old girl who was constantly late, wearing worn-out clothes, and systematically ignored by her teacher. "What's her name?" Emily asked the secretary. "Madison Thompson. The teacher says she's a problem." "Can I see her file?" The file contained only negative remarks: constantly late, inappropriate clothing, lack of interest. Emily decided to investigate personally. During recess, she approached Madison, who was sitting alone eating a piece of bread. "Hi, Madison. I'm the new pedagogical coordinator, Emily. Can I sit here?" The girl looked at her in surprise but nodded. "Why are you always late?" Madison hesitated, clearly unaccustomed to school adults asking kind questions. "I take care of my little brother in the morning. My mum works really early." "I see, and how do you get to school?" "Walking, it's far, but we don't have money for the bus." Emily felt a wave of recognition. It was her own story repeating itself. "Madison, can I ask you a few more questions?" "Sure. Do you like studying?" The girl's eyes lit up for the first time. "I love it. I want to be a teacher when I grow up." "What's your favorite subject?" "English. I love reading and writing stories." "And your teacher? How does she treat you?" Madison looked down. She doesn't really like me. Says I'm messy and dirty." Emily felt a familiar anger, but controlled it through experience. "Madison, can I tell you something?" "Okay. You're not messy or dirty. You're a brave girl who takes care of her family and still comes to school because you value education. That's admirable." Madison looked at Emily with surprise and hope. "You really think so?" "I know so. And you know why? Because I was once in your shoes." "What do you mean?" "When I was your age, I also arrived late and in worn-out clothes because I was taking care of my sick grandmother. I also had a teacher who didn't understand my situation. And what happened? Good people stepped in, and that changed everything for me. And now you're the coordinator." "Exactly. And now I'll make sure you have the same opportunities I had." That afternoon, Emily scheduled a meeting with Madison's teacher. "Teacher Sarah, I'd like to talk about the student Madison Thompson." "Oh, that troubled girl. Always late, always dirty." "Stop," Emily interrupted firmly. "Let's talk about this differently." "Excuse me?" "Madison isn't troubled. She's a 9-year-old who takes care of her little brother every morning before walking miles to school. And despite that, she dreams of becoming a teacher." Teacher Sarah looked embarrassed. I didn't know about her situation." "Because you never asked. Instead, you chose to judge a child by her appearance." "But what can I do? I have 30 students in my class. You can start by treating her with dignity and respect. You can include her in activities instead of isolating her. You can see potential where you once saw problems. And the practical issues, the lateness, the clothes, those are things we'll solve by supporting the family, not by humiliating the child." In the following months, Emily implemented the same kind of support program that had benefited her in her own experience. She arranged school transportation for Madison, connected the family with social assistance resources, and most importantly, changed the school's culture toward vulnerable students. Madison flourished. With the right support, she proved to be a brilliant student and a natural leader among her peers. Her teacher, after training and reflection, became one of the strongest advocates for the inclusion program. 6 months later, during a parent-teacher meeting, Madison's mother approached Emily. "Coordinator Emily, may I speak with you?" "Of course. I want to thank you for everything you've done for Madison. She's unrecognizable now, more confident, happier." "It wasn't just me. The whole school community decided to support her. But you were the one who saw in her what others didn't. That's what every child deserves, someone who sees their potential." That evening, Emily called home to share about her day. "How's work going?" Grandma Faith asked. "Amazing. Today I helped a girl who reminded me so much of myself at her age." "And how did that make you feel?" "Like my life had complete meaning. Like every hardship I faced prepared me for this moment." That's the true power of overcoming, my dear, when we use our experience to lift others up. 2 years later, Emily's school had become a regional model for its social inclusion programs. She had implemented early vulnerability identification systems, student mentorship programs, ongoing teacher training, and partnerships with community organizations. In recognition of her work, she was invited to speak at a national education conference. "What I've learned," she told an audience of 1,000 educators, "is that behind every troubled student, there's a complex human story deserving of understanding, not judgment." True educational inclusion doesn't happen when we ignore differences, but when we acknowledge them, understand them, and provide the right support so every student can thrive. And most importantly, when we invest in a vulnerable child, we're not just changing one life. We're breaking cycles, transforming families, and creating leaders who'll do the same for others in the future. After her speech, a young teacher approached her. "Teacher Emily, your story moved me deeply. I have a student who reminds me of what you described about yourself. How can I help him?" "First, talk to him. Ask about his story, his family, his dreams. Second, look beyond what you see on the surface. And third, be the person who believes in him when no one else does." "What if I don't know how to help?" "Ask for support. Education is teamwork. None of us can change lives alone, but we can all do our part." That year, Emily turned 25. To celebrate, her family threw a surprise party at home. "I can't believe you did this," she said, as she walked in and saw the house decorated and full of loved ones. Present were Grandma Faith, now 84, Elizabeth, Jennifer, Margaret, Sophia, who had become a nurse as planned, several students Emily had helped over the years, and surprisingly, Madison, now 12, and one of the top students in her school. "Teacher Emily," Madison said during the party, "can I tell you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. I know what I want to be when I grow up. Still want to be a teacher? I want to be an education coordinator just like you, so I can help other kids the way you helped me." Emily felt tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sure you'll be exceptional." During the party, Elizabeth raised a toast. 15 years ago, I met a 10-year-old girl who taught me about courage, dignity, and resilience. Today, I see a 25-year-old woman who's changing the world, one child at a time. Emily, you didn't just overcome your struggles, you turned them into your greatest strength. And through your work, you're making sure other kids don't have to go through what you did alone. So I raise my glass to you and to everyone here who chose to believe in the transformative power of love, education, and timely intervention. Everyone lifted their glasses, and Emily looked around at faces representing different chapters of her journey. The grandma who raised her with love, the aunt who stepped in at the right time, the teacher who learned to change, the coordinator who always supported her, the friend who always believed, and the children she was now helping to flourish. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you for showing me that family isn't just who gives birth to us, but who chooses to watch us grow and shine." That night, after everyone had left, Emily and Grandma Faith stayed up talking, as they always did. "Grandma, do you have any advice for the next 25 years of my life?" Grandma Faith smiled, her eyes still bright despite her age. "Keep planting gardens in people's lives, my flower. Keep believing every child deserves the chance to dream big. And keep being living proof that where we start doesn't decide where we end up. What if I feel overwhelmed or discouraged? Remember where you came from, how far you've come, and how many lives you've touched. And remember, you're never alone. You have a family who loves and believes in you." "I love you, Grandma. And I love you, my dear." More than words can say. 5 years later, at 30, Emily had become one of the most respected educators in the country. She had written 2 books on inclusive education, was leading an institute that trained teachers across the United States, and still worked directly with vulnerable children. One special morning, she received a call that moved her deeply. "Hello. Teacher Emily, it's Madison." "Madison, how are you? How's school?" "I'm great, and I have amazing news." "What is it?" I just got accepted into university to study education. I'm going to fulfill my dream of becoming a teacher." Emily felt a wave of pride and emotion. "Madison, I'm so proud of you. I knew you could do it. And it's all thanks to you. I'll never forget the day you sat beside me during recess and told me I was brave. You've always been brave, Madison. I just helped you see it. Teacher, can I ask you something?" "Of course. When I graduate, can I work at your institute? I want to learn from you how to transform lives through education." "It would be an honor to work with you." That day, Emily realized the circle was coming full. The girl who had once been humiliated for her circumstances had become the person who intervened in other children's lives. And now, one of the children she'd helped was preparing to carry on that legacy. During a meeting at her institute that same day, Emily presented a new proposal to her team. "I want to expand our program nationwide. I want every school in the country to have protocols for identifying and supporting vulnerable children." "That's an ambitious project," said one of her colleagues. "How do you plan to implement it?" "Through partnerships with universities, teacher training, creating educational resources, and most importantly, changing mindsets about what it truly means to educate." "And funding?" "Elizabeth and I are working on that. She has contacts with international organizations that support inclusive education." The project took 3 years to develop, but eventually became national policy. The Emily Parker Inclusive Education Program was implemented in schools across the country, establishing protocols to identify and support vulnerable students. On the day of the official launch, a ceremony was held in Washington, D.C. Emily, now 33, was invited to speak to education officials from across the nation. "When I was 10 years old," she began, "a teacher told me I was dirty and troublesome. Today, a program bearing my name is being implemented to ensure no child goes through what I did." This didn't happen by magic. It happened because brave people decided to intervene, because a teacher chose to change, because a coordinator chose to support, because an aunt chose to protect. And it happened because I chose to turn my pain into purpose. Today, we'll give you the tools to be those brave people in the lives of children who need intervention, to be the difference between despair and dreams fulfilled. After the ceremony, Emily was approached by a reporter. "Professor Emily, how does it feel knowing your personal story has become public policy?" "I feel honored, but mostly responsible. Now we have the chance to impact millions of children. That comes with a tremendous duty to ensure these programs are implemented seriously and effectively." "What do you hope happens in the coming years?" "I hope that a generation from now, stories like mine will be rare. I hope every child in the United States gets the chance to reach their potential, no matter their socio-economic circumstances." "And personally, what are your next plans?" "To keep working directly with children. I never want to lose touch with the heart of what I do. And to keep learning. Every child I meet teaches me something new about resilience and hope." That year, Emily received another special recognition. The school she had attended created the Emily Parker Room, a space dedicated to supporting students in vulnerable situations. During the opening, she reunited with many of her old classmates. Sophia, now head nurse at a public hospital, said, "Remember when we were kids and I asked you why you were always late? I never imagined that conversation was part of a story that would change education for the whole country." "Small human connections are more powerful than we realize," Emily replied. "Your friendship during those difficult times meant more than you can imagine." Ryan, who had become a teacher, added, "Your courage back then taught us that we must stand up for one another. That influenced my decision to become an educator." During the ceremony, Jennifer, now the regional education director, gave an emotional speech. "Over 20 years ago, I made one of the biggest mistakes of my career. I humiliated a brilliant child because of her appearance. That child could have given up on education. She could have developed traumas that would limit her forever. But Emily chose forgiveness. She chose to use her experience to educate, not to seek revenge. And through that choice, she not only healed herself, but healed me and is now healing our entire education system. Today, I am a better educator because a 10-year-old child taught me about dignity. And thousands of other children will have better opportunities because Emily transformed her pain into purpose. Margaret, now retired but still active in educational matters, concluded, "The lesson we all learned from Emily is that intervention isn't optional when we see injustice, that one courageous person can change entire systems, and that investing in a child's potential is the best way to build a better future for everyone." After the ceremony, Emily visited her old classroom. She sat at the desk where she used to sit, isolated in the back of the room, and reflected on her journey. A current student, seeing an adult sitting alone, approached her. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Emily smiled at the girl. "I'm great, thank you. I was just remembering when I used to go to school here." "You went here, that's cool. What was it like?" "It was complicated at times, but it was also where I learned some of the most important lessons of my life." "What kind of lessons?" "I learned that our current situation doesn't determine our future. I learned about the power of forgiveness, and I learned that each of us has the ability to make a difference in other people's lives." The girl looked interested. "Do you make a difference in people's lives?" "I try, and you can too when you grow up." "How?" "By being kind to classmates who seem different, by standing up for those being treated unfairly, and by never judging someone without knowing their story." The girl nodded seriously. "I'll remember that." That evening, Emily returned home where Grandma Faith, now 89, was waiting for her. Despite her advanced age and growing physical limitations, her mind remained sharp and her heart full of love. "How was the ceremony?" her grandmother asked. "Emotional. So many memories came back. Good memories, mostly. It's strange how the most painful experiences sometimes become the most meaningful. That happens when we choose to grow through pain instead of being limited by it." "Grandma, can I ask you something I've always wondered?" "Of course. During the hardest times when I was a child facing problems at school, did you ever imagine I'd get to where I am today?" Grandma Faith held her granddaughter's hand. "My dear, I always knew you were special, but I never imagined you'd become such a powerful force for change in the world. What did you see in me?" "I saw a girl who woke up at 5 in the morning to take care of a sick grandmother without ever complaining. I saw someone who kept dreaming despite the hardships. I saw kindness, determination, and a rare inner strength. And was that enough to believe in my future? That was enough to know that no matter what the future brought, you'd find a way to turn it into something good." They talked late into the night, sharing memories and dreams for the future. Emily knew her time with her grandmother was precious and limited, but she also knew the lessons and love she had received would last forever. In the following years, Emily continued expanding her work. She created international programs, wrote more books, and trained educators in various countries. But she never lost focus on working directly with children. At 35, she decided to adopt a child. She chose an 8-year-old girl named Lily, who had gone through situations similar to her own childhood. "Why do you want to adopt me?" Lily asked during one of their first conversations. "Because I believe every child deserves a family that loves and supports their dreams." "What if I'm too much trouble?" "Lily, there's no such thing as a child who's too much trouble. There are children who need more support, more understanding, more love, and I have all of that to give. You won't leave me if I do something wrong." Emily knelt to meet the girl at eye level. "Lily, real family never walks away. There might be hard moments, arguments, challenges, but I'll never abandon you." "How do you know?" "Because I was also a child who needed someone to believe in her, and special people did that for me. Now it's my turn to do the same for you." The adoption was finalized 6 months later, and Lily adapted wonderfully to her new family. Grandma Faith, despite her advanced age, was overjoyed to become a great-grandmother. "It's like the family is coming full circle," she told Emily. "What do you mean?" "You grew up here with so much love, and now you're passing that love forward. It's a beautiful cycle." Lily thrived in the loving, structured environment. Her grades improved, her confidence grew, and she developed a passion for reading and writing. "Mom Em," she said one day, she had chosen to call Emily that, "when I grow up, I want to help kids like us." How so? Kids who need families, who go through hard times, who need someone to believe in them. What career are you thinking of? Child psychology. I want to understand how kids think and feel, and how to help them heal when they're hurting inside. Emily smiled, seeing once again how love and support could transform lives and inspire vocations of service. 2 years after the adoption, Grandma Faith began showing signs of declining health. At 91, she remained sharp but physically frailer. One evening, she called Emily for a special talk. "My dear, I need to tell you some important things." "Of course, Grandma. What is it?" "First, I want you to know that raising you was the greatest privilege of my life. You turned my golden years into truly golden years." "Grandma." "Let me finish. Second, I want you to keep being the extraordinary person you've become. The world needs more people like you." "And third," Grandma Faith continued, her voice growing weaker, "I want you to know that Lily now has in you what you had in me, someone who loves her unconditionally and believes in her potential." Emily held her grandmother's hand, sensing this was a special farewell, even if not the last. "Grandma, everything I am today I owe to you. Your love gave me the strength to overcome everything. No, my flower. Your own good heart did that. I just gave it a safe place to grow." 3 months later, on a quiet spring morning, Grandma Faith passed peacefully in her sleep. Emily was by her side along with Lily, who had developed a deep love for her great-grandmother. The funeral was a celebration of the extraordinary life of a woman who had raised a granddaughter who changed the world. Hundreds attended, educators, former students, colleagues, and children whose lives had been indirectly touched by Grandma Faith's legacy. Aunt Elizabeth, now 83 but still sharp and active, gave a moving speech. Faith Parker was so much more than a woman who raised a granddaughter. She was the sower of an educational revolution. Through the love she gave to Emily, she planted seeds that blossomed into national policies, transformed lives, and renewed hope for millions of children. Jennifer, tears streaming down her face, added, "Grandma Faith forgave me indirectly when her granddaughter chose to forgive me. Through her, I learned that love can break cycles of pain and create cycles of healing." In the weeks following the funeral, Emily devoted herself to processing her loss while continuing to care for Lily, who was also grieving. "Mom, is Grandma Faith okay where she is now?" "I believe so, my dear. And more importantly, the love she gave us lives on in us." "How?" "Every time we're kind to someone, every time we help a person in need, every time we believe in a child's potential, we're continuing her legacy. So she'll never really be gone. Never. She'll live forever through the lives we touch with the love she taught us." 6 months after Grandma Faith's passing, Emily received news that would change her path once again. She was invited to become the National Director of Inclusive Education, a position created specifically to expand the programs she had developed. "It's an incredible opportunity," said Elizabeth. "You could impact millions of children directly, but it means less time working directly in schools, less time with individual children. Maybe it's time to trust that others can do the hands-on work while you ensure they have the resources and policies they need." After much reflection, Emily accepted the position. Her first initiative was creating the Faith Parker National Network, a system connecting schools, families, and support organizations to identify and help vulnerable children. In her inaugural speech, she said, "I accept this role not as an end, but as a means to ensure every educator in the United States has the tools to see potential where others see problems, a means to ensure no child is judged by their circumstances, but supported in their dreams." During her first 2 years in office, Emily implemented groundbreaking changes. She created national protocols for identifying social vulnerability, established mandatory teacher training programs, and developed cross-sector support systems. The results were remarkable: a 60% decrease in school dropout rates among at-risk children, a 40% improvement in their academic performance, and a significant cultural shift in how schools addressed socio-economic differences. Lily, now 12, watched her adoptive mother's work with growing pride and interest. "Mom, can I come with you on your next school visit?" "Why?" "I want to see how the work you do in the office turns into real changes for kids." Emily took Lily to visit a school in an underserved community where the programs had recently been implemented. There, they met a 9-year-old girl named Ashley, whose situation was strikingly similar to what Emily had once experienced. "How do you feel at school now?" Emily asked Ashley. "Much better. Before, the teachers didn't like me because I came in dirty. Now they understand I take care of my sick mom, and they help, instead of criticize." Lily listened intently, seeing firsthand how her adoptive mother's work impacted real lives. "Mom," she said on the way back, "now I understand why you chose this work." "What do you understand?" "That a child who's helped can grow up and help other children. It's like a chain of kindness that never ends." "Exactly. And one day you'll be part of that chain too, in whatever way you choose." At 40, Emily had become one of the most respected figures in American education. Her programs had been adapted and implemented in other countries across North America, and she was frequently invited to international conferences. But her proudest achievement remained personal. Lily had grown into a confident, empathetic teenager, determined to pursue a career in public service. "Mom, I've decided I want to study public policy alongside psychology," Lily announced at 15. "Why?" "Because I've seen through you that individual changes matter, but systemic changes can impact millions. I want to learn how to do both." "I'm so proud of you, Lily. And I'm proud of you. You've shown me that where we come from doesn't define how far we can go." That year, Emily made an important decision. She chose to write her autobiography, not to glorify her journey, but to create an educational resource that could inspire other children and guide educators. The book, titled From the Back Desk to the Department, A Journey of Social Transformation, became required reading in teaching programs across the country. In the introduction, she wrote, "This isn't the story of a victim who became victorious. It's the story of a child who had people who believed in her, and how that child chose to dedicate her life to being that person for others. It's about the transformative power of timely intervention, conscious forgiveness, and unconditional love." The book's release coincided with the 10th anniversary of the National Inclusive Education Program. To celebrate, a grand ceremony was held, bringing together educators, policymakers, and hundreds of children whose lives had been changed by the programs. Madison, now 22 and freshly graduated with a degree in education, was invited to speak as a representative of the program's first generation of beneficiaries. "10 years ago," she said, "I was a 9-year-old girl who showed up late and dirty to school. My teacher didn't understand my situation, and I felt invisible and worthless. Then teacher Emily sat beside me during recess and told me I was brave. Those words didn't just change my day, they changed the entire course of my life. Today I'm a teacher, graduated with a scholarship, and next month I'll start working at the Emily Parker Institute. I'll dedicate my career to doing for other children what teacher Emily did for me." The audience rose in applause, and Emily felt deep emotion seeing how the cycle continued to come full circle. Elizabeth, now 87, gave the closing remarks. "When I met Emily over 25 years ago, I saw a courageous girl facing impossible hardships for her age. Today, I see a woman who turned her scars into wisdom and her pain into purpose. But most importantly, Emily never forgot where she came from. She never stepped away from direct work with children. She never lost the humility that makes her so effective in what she does. Through her, I've learned that true greatness isn't measured by the power we accumulate, but by the lives we lift. It's not in how many awards we receive, but in how many dreams we make possible." In her closing speech, Emily reflected on her journey. "When I was 10 years old, being humiliated at school, I never imagined I'd one day stand here speaking about national educational transformation. But now I understand every hard moment was preparation for this work. I'm not here as an example of individual triumph, but as proof that systems can change, people can grow, and a properly supported child can transform the world. The girl who once hid in the back of the classroom now speaks to packed auditoriums, not because she became special, but because she discovered she always was. Every child is. Our work as educators and as a society is to ensure every child discovers this about themselves before it's too late. 5 years later, at 45, Emily decided it was time to return to working directly in schools. She had built lasting systems in government and now wanted to return to her roots. She accepted the position of principal at her old school, now completely transformed by the programs she had helped implement. On her first day back, she walked through the halls where she had once felt so small and invisible. Now she saw posters about inclusion, children from different backgrounds playing together, and teachers trained to see potential in every student. Lily, now 18 and about to enter college, accompanied her that first day. "How does it feel to be back?" she asked. "Like coming full circle. I left here as a wounded child and return as an adult with the power to ensure other children don't go through what I did." "And what's the next dream?" "To see you and your generation carry this work forward. You have tools and awareness my generation didn't. You can go further than we ever could." "I promise I'll continue, Mom M. You showed me our responsibility is to lift each other up." That year, the school where Emily was now principal was chosen as a national model for educational inclusion. Educators from across the country came to visit and learn about the methods implemented. During one such visit, a young teacher asked, "Principal Emily, what's the secret to creating a truly inclusive school?" "There are no secrets," she replied, "only principles. Seeing every child as a whole person, understanding that temporary circumstances don't define permanent potential, and never underestimating the power of a kind word or a gesture of support." And how do we keep that perspective when facing pressures for results and limited resources? By always remembering we're shaping people, not just statistics. Every child we help flourish can transform a family, a community, a generation. On her 50th birthday, Emily organized a special celebration. She invited everyone who had been important in her journey, former students who were now educators, teachers who had changed their practices, families supported by the programs. Elizabeth, now 92 and in a wheelchair but still sharp and present, gave a heartfelt toast. 30 years ago, a 10-year-old girl taught me about dignity, courage, and forgiveness. Today, a 50-year-old woman continues to teach the world about love, transformation, and hope. Emily, you've honored not just your grandma's memory, but also the investment so many made in you. Most importantly, you've multiplied that investment 1,000,000 times through your work. Lily, now 23 with degrees in psychology and public policy, added, "Mom M, you gave me the greatest gift a child can receive, the certainty of being unconditionally loved, and the awareness that we have a responsibility to give that love back to the world. I promise to continue the legacy you started, always remembering that real transformation happens one child, one family, one school at a time." That night, after everyone had left, Emily stayed alone at home, looking at photos of her journey. There was one of her at 10, shy and sad, another from high school graduation, one receiving an honorary doctorate, a picture with Lily on adoption day, and the last photo taken with Grandma Faith. She realized her life had been a complex tapestry, where every difficult thread had contributed to creating something beautiful and meaningful. She grabbed paper and a pen and wrote a letter she planned to leave for Lily. "My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, it means my journey in this world has ended, and yours is still unfolding. I want you to know a few important things. First, that you were the greatest gift of my life. Through you, I learned that love doesn't have to come from blood, but from the daily choice to care, support, and believe. Second, that you have within you everything you need to keep changing the world. Not because you inherited it from me, but because you chose to cultivate kindness, empathy, and determination. Third, that the work we began together is far from over. There will always be children needing someone to believe in them, families needing support, and systems needing reform. Trust your heart, use your mind, and never forget that your origin doesn't determine your destiny. Your choices determine your legacy. Love you, always and forever, Mom M." Emily tucked the letter away in a safe place and continued living fully, knowing she had built a life of purpose and impact. At 60, after a career dedicated to educational transformation, Emily officially retired. But she kept working voluntarily, now mentoring young educators and advising international organizations. Lily, at 33, had become the Secretary of Education, continuing and expanding the work her adoptive mother had begun decades earlier. One quiet afternoon, sitting in the garden of the house where Emily had grown up with Grandma Faith, the two talked about the future. "Mom, Em, sometimes I wonder if we've changed enough." "Why do you say that?" "Because there are still children facing discrimination, families struggling, imperfect systems." Emily smiled and pointed to a tree they had planted together years before. "See that tree? When we planted it, it was just a small, fragile sapling. Now it offers shade, shelter for birds, and its seeds are growing new trees." "I understand the metaphor." "Our work is like planting forests, Lily. We won't see all the fruits, but every tree we plant creates seeds for more trees. Every life we touch touches other lives. Every system we improve benefits generations." "And how do we know we're planting the right trees?" "By always asking, will this give dignity to a child? Will this give opportunities to those who need it most? Will this break cycles of discrimination? If the answer is yes, we're on the right path." That night, Emily fell asleep, knowing her life had been well lived. She had turned her pain into healing for others, her obstacles into bridges for other children, and her individual story into collective change. The girl who once felt invisible at the back desk had become a visible force of transformation in the world, and through her work, millions of other children would never have to feel invisible. Grandma Faith's legacy lived on through Emily. Emily's legacy lived on through Lily and all the lives she had touched, and the cycle of love, intervention, and transformation would continue forever. End of story. Tell us in the comments which part of the story touched you the most. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories of resilience and transformation. Thank you for joining us on this journey.